All right, it's 9 o'clock. I think we can start the session today. Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to this fourth Inklusiiv Talks of the year. Today's topic is inclusion of international talents in Finnish working life. My name is Vikas Guru, and I'm currently heading projects and events at Inklusiiv, and I will be moderating the panel today. If you're joining us or hearing about us for the first time, Inklusiiv for the first time, we are a community with the mission to create and share knowledge about diversity, equity and inclusion, and support organizations to transform that knowledge into action. Also a bit about we also create different projects, events, and content that support the making of working life more diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And one such event is our upcoming Inclusive Forum in November on the theme belonging, an integral part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Please, check our social media site to get more information about the event. But yeah, about today's topic, as I mentioned earlier, today's topic, inclusion of international talent in Finnish working life. The main goal for today's session is sort of figuring out some tangible solutions for making the Finnish life work better and more inclusive for international talents. Among us, we have an amazing list of speakers, starting with Ryan Savage, Head of Talent at Inventure. We have Kamilla, Sultanova, DI expert. We have Kristina, CEO at The Shortcut. And finally, we have Ulla, Hiekkanen-Mäkelä, Head of Talent Boost. A bit about the practicalities before we start the session. 40 minutes for the panel discussion, and remaining about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on the time, 15 to 20 minutes for the Q&A session. So during the event, during the whole webinar, the chat box on the right-hand side of the platform will be up and running, and we very, very much sort of encourage everyone to share their thoughts, opinions about the topic in discussion. And should you have any questions, please also remember to use the Q&A function on the platform, and we'll try to include as many questions as possible at the end of the session. All right, but yeah, let's dive right away into it. Firstly, a warm welcome to all the speakers that we have today. I would like to start directly right away by asking each of our panelists their own perspective regarding today's topic. And in their opinion, what kind of barriers do you think the international talents are facing right now in Finland? Maybe I could start with Kristina first. Good morning, Kristina.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. So I think one of the challenges that we face, so I work mainly with folks who are already in Finland, and we're helping highly educated, unemployed or underemployed. So that's kind of the wheelhouse with which we operate. And I'm from Canada, and my team is 9 and we're from 6 countries. So we kind of live the experience of many of the folks with which we help. But one of the things which I see is quite unique is that Finland is a very small country. It's very network based. And so as foreigners, we see a lot of folks struggling to get traction because the networks are quite small. And I think that this is one of the fundamental and probably the easiest but most time-consuming thing to fix. So I would really encourage folks to really dive deep and break outside their comfort zone and really reach out and get as broad of a network as possible. There are a lot of other challenges, but I think that that's one that's very tangible and can be fixed within your direct control.
Absolutely, totally agree with that one, Kristina. How about Ryan? How do you feel about this topic overall?
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of see it from maybe a different perspective, as I really work with kind of bringing talent into Finland, for specific roles and stuff like that. And I would say that some of the barriers that in talking to these talents who move here for roles and companies is, the Finnish bureaucracy, that long period of getting your permit, a lot happens during that period. You have to give notice for the company you're currently working in while you're still sort of waiting out this kind of period for your permit. working with Vero, taxation and stuff like that, understanding how it works here, accessibility in English, getting a lot of these service done so that you can understand it. And I think another important one is kind of employment opportunities for your spouse. You know, finding jobs for your wife or husband or your partner is sometimes a bit harder here. And then I think as well, like, you know, for people who are here already, I think, you know, a lot, you know, 99% of it is network here in Finland. And so how can you, you know, tap into that network to find a job if you haven't come here specifically for a job already?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. And I think that you brought up a really good point about, you know, the bureaucracy. I think the immigration aspect, I think there has been a lot of talk related to reform migri in the past few weeks, and also relocation of the talents, and then of course their better half also. It's quite difficult in that sense. And of course we can go on and on about the Finnish language skills and the need for every international talent to have that kind of like proficiency to some level. I would like to, you know, bring in Kamilla in here. You've been working with different universities, different kind of like sectors. How do you overall think about this topic?
Yeah, good morning, and so nice to be here this beautiful sunny day in Helsinki. I work with, as diversity inclusion expert, I serve immigrant community, and I don't just call international talents because there's immigrant women, refugees, students, and spouses including, and I serve also the business community. So it's also, and universities. So I'll be working with making Helsinki region city a more inclusive employer. And that was spanning 5 universities, 3 municipalities, and lots of lobby organizations. And I think under the Talent Boost program, which I was, you know, pretty much from the start, from 2018, I see the problems is that, yes, fully agree with the one thing is the bureaucracy, then this networking, then there is lack of context and visibility of international students, let's say from university perspective, but also very fragmented resources given to career services, because it's this project-based culture that really brings in some great ideas, brings in some great initiatives that can grow to something best practices, but then there's not enough of either willpower or then a commitment to continue something that really works. And other thing is that that I've been experiencing is that the people who work with onboarding and recruiting international students, they basically work in the same way, and we need to change that approach to how do you actually make something student recruitment and then make that red thread to engaging them when they come here and build their awareness of networking, how so that they make informed choices before coming to Finland, so they don't ruin it for themselves. And so for me, I work with people mostly who are here, but also been promoting Finland as a place for education. I'm originally from Uzbekistan, so I know how after COVID, people are looking out for education opportunities. So it still is a great place to be, but lack of commitment to like specific earmark funding and university resources, because career service professionals are really happy and really hardworking to make it work for all, but also those equity programs, mentoring, talent management programs, and anything that to really bring them in to build networks. They're very fragmented at the moment across all universities. And we have 13 universities and 22 universities of applied sciences across the country. And I've trained a lot of those career service professionals. So yeah, I think it's the structural issues that unfortunately block from, really giving the international students the start, that access to where they start from.
Thanks, Kamilla. And we will definitely go through those points also about what kind of initiatives, what kind of programs are there at the moment in Finland to kind of like integrate the overall immigrants or let's say international talent to Finnish working life. So we can discuss a bit more later on during the session. I would like to bring in Ulla on this case. Good morning, Ulla. And what are your thoughts on this topic?
Thank you, Vikas. So my name is Ulla Hiekkanen, and I come from Business Finland, and I'm heading the Talent Boost team. So to answer your question, what do we think that are the biggest barriers from company side? to recruit international talents. I think we have basically companies who have already international talents, who are multinational, diverse, international, and then those who don't. And the companies who still don't recruit international talents, I think the main barriers are that the companies are kind of concerned that do they really find the right person with the right skills to work in that company and in that role that they have open. The second thing that is slowing down the companies is that they are afraid of their own culture. And as many of you know, some of the Finnish companies, and especially small and medium-sized companies, they have a very Finnish dominating culture. Everybody has studied in the same universities. They have different backgrounds. They all promote the same ice hockey teams and so forth. So if you hire a first international person inside that company, that changes a lot how that company works internally. The management, the customer relationships, the team meetings, and so forth. And then the third, and I think the most important question, and also the trigger that we need to use, is that is hiring an international talent good for the business? And if hiring internationals is good for the business, then all these other obstacles, we will find a way of working around them. So the best way to start introducing international talents to the companies that don't have international recruitments yet is to look for those which are starting their internationalization and export business and serving international customers, because there we can justify the business benefits. Why do we need to have somebody in our team who comes from different culture, who has different nationality, comes from different language group and so forth? So I think these are the things that triggers that we need to look inside the companies to help international talents find jobs in Finland.
Thanks, Ulla. Definitely agree with a lot of points that has been made by all of you. I think overall, in general, like the general understanding is that the barriers are there, and you can pretty much see it. And things are not as smooth as we want to be in this happiest country in the world. I mean, for example, the recent Helsinki Times article also showed, like, immigrants, for example, are earning, let's say, 25% less than native-born Finns. So there is like unfair, kind of like payment kind of policies at the same time. They're like highly qualified international talents. And also, for example, the Finnish returnees, I think that's a big part also, the Finnish returnees are not being able to kind of find the right job according to their kind of qualifications. And also in Finland, I feel at least one of the issues is that the international talents, that they don't have the recognition of their own qualifications that they have obtained abroad or in their home country. So there are these kind of challenges. So what I want to go at least move forward is that we have kind of like to some extent identified those barriers, those problems. But now I think, what are the things, what are we doing about it? What are the solutions? Kind of like you all touched upon a bit on this one, but of course I would love to have a bit more kind of elaboration on this. How are these barriers taken into account by, for example, the hiring organizations, as you are all kind of representing different ones? Do you have some concrete practicalities that organizations should use to overcome this? Maybe I could go first with Kamilla. Like you said, you have been part of Talent Boost, kind of like Boost ecosystem since 2018, and you have also led the Hiekkanen-Mäkelä International Talent Management Program. So with all the experiences, what do you think, like what sort of solutions or practices do you think that it should be kind of like practiced to overcome this barriers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so luckily, let's recognize what works. So the talent management programs, they are popping up like mushrooms and across from Kuusamo to Turku for that matter, because there is a lot of shared practices that's been going on to say, well, what can we do as a university to build better ties to business community? and also diversify who are the business community. We also have small, middle-sized companies, we have nonprofits, we have trade unions, and we also have cities as potential employers, which are also challenged to walk the talk on being inclusive recruiter and employer. And what I've noticed also is that when you start something as a talent management program, you are there to also change the culture of university, and you need to really build that awareness as why this talent management needs to serve only international students. So I've experienced across Finnish universities thinking, what is the challenge between equality, that we should have equal services for all students, versus equity, because these talent management programs are allowing for equity programs to really bring in the international students' visibility, giving them context and relevance, which you just mentioned that even Finnish returnees don't find their own relevance in the Finnish job market being Finns. And the second thing is what also works is that alumni communities are business representatives and they do want to help. During the COVID year, we had to pivot to online mentoring and employer engagement opportunities within Hanken-Heat, for example. And 23 out of 30 students were matched. So it did take a lot of effort. We needed to be agile and really align what is the talent need of the company and what is the talent of the Hanken that we had to really match that to anything that we just say 6 weeks projects, 2 months, 3 months. So really be flexible and not to be able to deviate from like what we wanted to do. And now it's just about getting connected. And the third thing I see is that universities as career service professionals, there are just so few of them. And we really need to, match and get more resources, both in human resources, but also earmark budget to marketing programs, which is really reaching out to business communities. If it's in different regions, we have different industries present, right? So how do you celebrate the successes of hired international students, hired spouses? And I think that's been a bit of a pickle, because marketing budget is always put something to the last, and you need to do a huge facelift as a universities. We know they're siloed, and so how do you bring in university with a personal space? And I think storytelling has really been effective, at least for Hanken-Heat, to really get the recognition it got. And what I mentioned in the beginning, the fragmented budgeting makes it also difficult to get hold of people who really want to make it work, because then you just go from 2-year budgeting, 1-year budgeting to projects to something that just doesn't maybe withhold, and that could actually backfire, because when you're building business community trust, you need to drive it over and over again, and you need to replicate your successes. And if you don't have the same people who are really burning for it, or teams, I think then the whole other talent management programs are going to suffer. So I think universities need new muscles, and they need to also hire people who really speak the jargon of either startup community, jargon of business and different industries and nonprofits.
Definitely. Thanks, Kamilla. And we can definitely come back to the budgeting part, fragmented budgeting part on the next question. And I think Ulla would be the right person to tell a bit more about, what kind of budgets that are allocated to universities and those kind of organizations use those amounts to integrate the international talent. But I would want to go back to at least to Ryan on this topic pretty much. Ryan, you have been, in the HR for over 15 years, from the States to the Nordics, and you've been working in at least in Finland with a lot of big startups. How do you see the overall kind of like the barriers, and what kind of like, kind of solutions from the HR perspective for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in a way, the startup ecosystem is in a bubble. In a way, it is quite international already. But I also think that, what you're seeing is a lot of companies taking things into their own hands, right? Like not, waiting for government to take action and stuff like that. Some of it with the long immigrant permit processing times, you're seeing companies go more remote, right? So starting employees remote first, and then once kind of the process goes through, then moving into Finland. So that's one kind of solution to deal with that. I think also, like, when it comes to helping employees' spouses find opportunities, really working with organizations, I think like the Shortcut or whoever, to really kind of work with how you can find employment for spouses. And then I think, a lot of times it's really kind of, buying services to help, someone moving into Finland, finding housing, where are the good places to live, that type of stuff, getting a bank account. All these things are really kind of quite burdensome here in Finland as a newcomer. And so having kind of solutions for your employees to be able to access those quite easily. So I think, again, you're seeing a lot of kind of these companies take it into their own hands and making sure that their employees that they've hired, that they brought into Finland are taken care of and are getting services as much as possible.
Yeah, I think totally agree with you, Ryan, there also. And I think there are like a lot of independent, let's say, organizations and communities that are helping to find, for example, when we talk about mothers in business or international working women of Finland, I mean, they are really having good initiatives and really helping people to get into this, work life. So they're doing an amazing job, and I'm sure like there are so many other organizations and communities that are doing the same thing. Maybe like what Kamilla said, maybe we have to promote them a bit more so that everybody knows more about it and kind of like knows where to find those sort of help. I want to bring Kristina on this topic. That Kristina, you have been an entrepreneur, you have been working in large multinational companies and also like small impact organization, and now leading the Shortcut, which is an amazing organization. How do you see the barriers overall from your point of view?
Well, I think first, if I look at the talent side, so I think there is a lot of extremely active, talented organizations to help talent, but I think they're quite disparate. So I think if we had like a portal that had all of the places that support foreign talent, because many of us come from different entry points, student, spouse, coming from the EU. There's just so many different ways to come into Finland, and depending on which path you come, you're offered different services. And I think if we had a way to collect those services, both for newcomers, but for folks who are building a life here and looking for sort of services to have better integration experiences, or language lessons after you've been here for 10 years or whatever. I think first of all we should consider how we centralize those services. And when I say centralize, I don't mean that we become one organization. I mean that we have a central way to access the support and the services that are available. I think altruistically we all have something to offer, and if we kind of remove the thought that in some ways we compete and just are there to really drive the benefit of the community, we'll probably have leaps and bounds, and there's plenty for everyone at the end of the day. So I think that that's one very practical way, is to find a way that we can centralize the information and the services for people, no matter their sort of time of their journey in Finland, for foreigners here in Finland. And I think then on the corporate side, we have statistically seen over and over again that a diverse and inclusive team generates better revenue. That's just a known fact. But we see companies still being slow to the game for that. And recently I came across an article, and it was saying that we used to grow up in this world where scientifically they've proven that there's the carrot and the stick. So people are motivated by discomfort and comfort. And in fact, what they're saying now is that people are only motivated by discomfort. So they want to get away from the discomfort. And I think that we know that there's reward at the end by having diverse, right? We know that profits can go up by having diversity in your team, but people still choose discomfort over the reward. And I think we either need to make the discomfort more or the rewards more, because I think we need to push really hard to force companies to see that diversity is better for their organizations at all levels. Because looking at the profits or the projection of profits when you have a diverse team isn't enough. So what do? What can we use as implements to drive more diversity? Because the reward isn't enough. So do we need to make it more uncomfortable? And I don't mean like in a really negative way, but how do we make it for companies to be more open in a faster way? And the last point I would add is that we live in a world of iterative change, and technology and companies are working in transformative change. And so we need the processes and the structures to really start looking at how they evolve in the same way that business is evolving. Otherwise, we're just going to have a greater and greater spread service to need. So those are my thoughts.
Absolutely. I think, Kristina, that you brought a really good point. And also, I think Frank on the comment section also pointed out, I think the centralizing information is very much very critical at this point of time. And I think we can discuss a bit more later on during the session on how different organizations and NGOs and public sectors can kind of like collaborate to kind of like create that kind of centralized hub for this information. So we can go back a bit more later. But I want to bring Ulla on this part that, of course, we've been, there has been you've been part of Talent Boost, and there has been a constant kind of like a point of discussion that why Finland is seeking for talent from abroad when there are like highly skilled talents already in the country. And I think that is like a question that I think for all of us is quite like that we want to know, at least we would love to know like your arguments on that. So as a Talent Boost, which is kind of like designed to boost the immigration for let's say senior specialists, employees and students and researchers, how do you think that we could tackle and we could kind of like let's say cater all the initiatives, all the programs that we have for talents who are available in Finland? How do we integrate them to Finnish working life? If you could.
Okay, this is really an important question, that those companies who have open jobs which don't need Finnish language skill, or at least fluent Finnish language skill, how do we match the talents who are already in Finland, or people who are outside and want to find a job in Finland, so the demand and the supply, the open jobs and the talents. So since a couple of months, we have now had an international job portal, which is called jobsinfinland.fi, which collects through artificial intelligence from different sources all those jobs which are English language or don't require fluent Finnish language. And there are currently about 800 open jobs in different parts of Finland on different kinds of skills, on different kinds of professional backgrounds. And I think this is a good start. It's not perfect yet, but it's a good start. So if you're international in Finland, go and browse through those open jobs and then apply directly to the company. So that's the step number one. The step number two is that, okay, like money talks. So what kind of financial incentives can we give to companies so that they take the risk and hire the first international person and change the company inside? So the Talent Boost ecosystem, we have a Talent Explorer funding from Business Finland for companies which are growing international markets. So if they hire an international person to a job which is kind of opening new export markets, targeting new customers, doing country analysis and so forth. So any job that is promoting the company's international growth, the employer can get up to 20,000 euros, which is practically half of the annual salary for 1 year to hire that person. So this is definitely a win-win. So a person with international background and hopefully with some business background as well can find a job in an SME, growing their international business, and the company is then getting all that skill and capability and networks into their use. Kamilla also talked a lot about the universities, and I really want to give hat off to the Lappeenranta University, which recently announced that they have a voucher for international students for 1,500 euros, that the international students can go to find jobs. So any employer who gives a job to an international student during their final years or after graduation can use that benefit. And these kind of incentives, at least they open a door to international talent to go and interview in the company. And then it also lowers the risk for the employer. Say, okay, if I get this little encouragement, so maybe with you, I will try and step on in this internationalization train. So very practical things, and motivating the individual companies, individual recruiters, and helping to find the right person and the right company match. These are some of the practical things that we need to do and spread the word together.
Thanks, Ulla. And I think we can always talk about, what kind of incentives, what kind of benefits, let's say, organizations or governmental organizations, for example, provides the other bodies. But I think we can discuss a bit later on. Of course, the fundings might be there, but even though you have the funding, are you using the funding on the right way? Are there, are there proper hiring process, for example? What are the biases, the hiring, personnel themselves, kind of like practice to make sure that you have the right person on the team. I want to bring in at least Kristina on this discussion. Now we are moving on to some initiatives and programs the NGOs, the organizations are doing to kind of like integrate international talents. At least with a shortcut, at least on the kind of according to Shortcut's own description, it's a impact-driven organization that trains and equips community members to build meaningful careers in Finland. How do you see overall, Kristina, on this part, and what kind of programs, what kind of initiatives that the Shortcut has done to make these things happen?
Well, thanks for the question. So we work annually with about 2,000 people, but there's 10,000 unemployed or underemployed educated foreigners in the greater Helsinki area. And that's sort of our target market, if you will, although we also work with unemployed Finns. But our organization uses trainings, which are sort of more than one day. These are like a few days to a few months worth of packed knowledge events. We also use events, coaching, and our network. So those are kind of the building blocks with how we serve our customers. And as it goes for the training, so we have two kind of high-level strategies with our training. We do a lot of different types of trainings, but the first is where we take tech skills and we layer over traditional skill sets. So an example of this would be where we take traditional marketing and we layer digital marketing, social media analytics, AI on top of that. And on the flip side of that, we take very technical folks and we give them business training on top. So we're teaching them project management skills, cost analysis, business values, understanding sort of the core business thinking so that their technical skills become more valuable within the company. Because one of the things that is not often in the news is we talk a lot about tech shortages within industry, but what companies want are techies who can understand business value and can help them reach their goals faster. So we're kind of working on one of these two tracks at the very high level, but within that we do things like HR recruitment training, coding 101, digital marketing. We do a lot of trainings underneath those umbrellas, but we think that by offering these types of trainings to this greater community that I mentioned before, we'll have more impact, because then we're taking away kind of the mismatch, if you will, between skills demand and skills need. So by kind of modernizing, doing our part to modernize the workforce, we're at least removing another barrier towards success. And then when you layer on top the coaching, which is both career coaching, so navigating the Finnish job market, and life coaching, so driving your confidence and the skills you need as an individual. And then on top of that, networking, we're really hoping we're making a disciplined, intentional, kind of really putting a point on the end of the arrow to drive folks more into employment. And we're very practical. So what we teach are skills and not theory, although we do the theory as well.
Thanks, Kristina. Just to follow up on that, to Kristina, I mean, you've been doing a lot of like those kind of initiatives, these projects, these training programs within the Shortcut. But how about the funding structure itself? Are you able to kind of organizations like yourself? Are you able to find the funding from the government?
And that's our challenge. That is our challenge, because our funding, we have multiple funding mechanisms, but the ones for the trainings are normally coming from the cities or the unemployment office, or now the cities which have taken the unemployment offices. And that funding is very specific and driven by the cities. And one of the things we've been talking a lot about is we are probably one of the largest sort of organizations that work with the talent that is here. And we've been capturing the data on that talent since we started, and we know the demands and we know what works. And so we've been trying to work with the cities to say, this is where we think the greatest needs are, and this is where we can help. But the cities only put a handful of tenders out per year that are specific to ours. You know, we're training 25, 30 people at a time, 4, 5, 6, 7 times per year. It's not that many people when you think how many people need those services. So again, if there were more funding, you know, this move from unemployment to the cities is a great example. There's a lot of people who need support and not a lot of funding to go with it. And I think that we need more direct funding when it comes to that, and less sort of fluffy funding and more very specific funding, because fluffy funding doesn't help anybody. And I know that that's very kind of, everyone has their own idea about what fluffy funding is, but I think we need to be very smart. We talk about smart money, and I think that we can help our funding mechanisms be more smart with how they spend for better return on investment.
Thanks, Kristina. I would like to bring Ulla on this one, since it's related to grants and budgeting. I remember at one point we discussed that the government would allocate extra budget for talent boost and for attracting, international talent. How is the situation on this? And then, is there any kind of, like you already mentioned something about kind of like providing some services to organization, but do you want to provide the funding, or do you provide a bit more extra other services apart from, let's say, money? So what is your thought on this one?
Like Kamilla already said, this funding structure and the talent boost network is quite extensive. Basically, we have 2 channels of money. We have the Ministry of Economic and Employment, and then we have the Ministry of Education, which is funding the universities and the Universities of Applied Science when it comes to international students. The money from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment comes to Business Finland to work on the national packages. And for instance, the Talent Explorer funding and the Jobs in Finland and all the services that we do, matchmaking events in Finland, and also the recruitment and brand work that we do internationally is funded from that. Then, like you said, the cities and regions, they have their own talent boost buckets, because some of the services that the companies need, and also some of the services that the talents need, they are locally based. And for instance, in Tampere area, there is really an extensive package of services for local companies, matchmaking events, ambassador networks. They are actually starting an international house Tampere tomorrow. It's the big kickoff day, which serves the local talents and also the companies. In Turku area, there are also similar services set up for local companies and local talents. And one example that I want to mention about practical things that the companies can do to integrate the international talents. In Turku area, there were several companies who had hired international talents, either from Finland or abroad, it doesn't matter. And they felt that they need to do something to integrate these talents outside office hours and integrate them better in free time. So the companies, they decided to invite the international families from several companies once a month to come together and make friendships and share information and talk about how can we improve our lives in Turku area and so forth. So it's not only initiatives that we do with the companies, but it's also initiatives that help the people who are already here integrate and and build their life in the Finnish society. So long story short, so there are different funding channels, national and regional, and I think that the regional services, they are very, very important because they connect the people and the companies on local levels.
Yeah, thanks, Ulla. I'll quickly jump in to get back to Kamilla first, and then Ryan. Kamilla, you have been strong advocate of, for example, mentoring and this kind of like initiatives, and have been speaking a lot about, for example, volunteering and civic engagement and all this sort of things. How do you see this kind of like initiative working of integrating the talents to working life?
Yeah, so just to jump in quickly for the budgeting and talent, sorry, what Ulla just said, I think it's true that there is money for it, but I want to still reiterate that the money doesn't go strategically as if it's assigned to career services, because it's anyway up to the management of universities to decide how much money will the career services get earmarked for integrating international students. So that strateginen rahoitus, that's millions of euros. I know it's not all going to you to integration, and it shouldn't, because also universities financing structure is changing from 2023 going forward. So I do believe that again, for the fluffy money, which Kristina mentioned, to smart money and earmarked funding regionally, city, university, I think that should be much more aligned and help career service professionals who are actually building systems to, bending backwards. I think Sandra Slota is one example from Arcada that, there's lots of people who are making networks outside to share practices. So coming back to the initiatives like bottom-up engagement, yes, I know some of what we're talking is two things. One thing is the structural problems. So the funding, the language of delivering of the service projects, everything is in Finnish and Swedish. So even if Kristina and I want to work with Talent Boost support, we can't get hired for this. And that's a challenge, because there's a huge pool of international talents, immigrants who've been here, who have an expertise and experience. It simply is difficult to really break into that structural problem that all the funding offered by the state and this whole internationalization programs are run by the public sector. It's difficult to even affect that change. So we are in the non-profit sector and trying to get those pennies and euros get to support international talents that we serve. And the third one is the access to funding, how those who fund mechanisms actually bring that support to invite different actors, non-profits. How could Business Finland support non-profits, which are modern business, IWolf shortcut? Is it always that it should be like specifically, is there consulting houses, only a few are invited to bid? So the whole funding, like even that tender system should be also earmarked to English or Russian, whatever languages we're serving, in which region we are in across Finland. For the onboarding of students and talent, spouses, refugees, mentoring and volunteering is one way to break into the social networks. And I really use social capital exchange here, theories that support that social capital exchange does lead to economic outcomes. It gives you a sense of context and relevance, so that you don't apply for 500 jobs and you don't shower employers with jobs, with CVs that you may, you might even get a reply. I've trained toimisto professionals. I've trained career service professionals. I've trained companies. And what I see here, for these mentoring programs to be truly celebrated and cross-sectoral work to really deliver, let companies, employers have that activist approach and have those earmarked money for community engagement by helping those mentoring programs thrive. So when you have a company connected to NGOs or even artist collaborations, we all really have this most emotional appeal, but also the way that how we can do this together. And volunteering for employees, volunteering for students should not be misunderstood with unpaid labor. This is where companies, if those are representatives across companies here, I think what you can do is to really think, how do you shape your talent pipeline for people outside traditional mold? What is the way? Do you have paid internships? Do you have a story that really aligns to what students and talents and all the quality diverse talent we have here can really relate to? And also, if you're a public organization, it's the same question. How do we actually make sure that they are heard, they're seen, and they're valued through your employer branding approach? And I've been attacked a few times that volunteering is not really a way to get a job in here. And I want to really have that separation between volunteering as a civic engagement, as a bottom up. We have a lot of people, students and talents with different resources. And I don't want the volunteering as an act of, not altruistic act, but also strategic. It's changing the face of how volunteering turns to change making today versus paid jobs, paid experiences, paid internships. So for me, mentoring really changes lives. And we see few companies taking a stand, but I find it so sad if one mentoring program has to open and close. And so if companies could just put that, as they say, this is our community engagement and this is our commitment to foster diverse employees or employees with diverse inclusive mindsets, and also being part of something that's ongoingly works, it's win-win solution. So that's my call to action for any organization that you are, public or private.
Thanks, Kristina. I want to bring in Ryan on this one. In terms of, for example, initiatives in terms of different HR policies and practices, and I also want to kind of connect that dot with how organizations creating more inclusive environment for this international talents. And you have been having a lot of experience, especially working on the startup culture, startup tech companies. How is the situation on those areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think obviously there's different needs for whatever reason why you're here in Finland. And I think for this specific group, talent is mobile these days. Someone, on average in a tech company is staying probably 3 to 5 years in that role. And most likely people who moved to Finland from somewhere else for a job is going to be moving to another country for another job in 3 years. So really understanding that there's an aspect of that as well. And not, one size doesn't fit all when talking about talent. And so I think the idea then of needing to integrate into Finnish society is a little bit different for that subgroup of the population. Learning the Finnish language is probably not going to be a priority if you're working, in English. And your next job will be working in English. So I think it's important to remember that. I do think it's important though, for companies, and we talk a lot about this with our portfolio companies, is, obviously bringing people from different cultures, different working cultures, it can be difficult at first to get on the same page. So ensuring that you're having these trainings about working with different cultures, it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that it's different and trying to find ways to kind of work together. Diversity and inclusion is super important. And I love that, in the 6 years that I've been in Finland, I've seen more and more talk about it and more trainings with companies. And it's very important to kind of have those trainings for your employees. No matter if you're an international tech company here in Finland or, a small or medium enterprise working solely in Finnish. I think that, again, it's education and it's training and it's understanding that there's different needs for different subgroups of this kind of topic of international talent.
Thanks, Ryan. I want to bring in Kamilla on this one. Kamilla, since you are, you've been providing those training to universities, to different organizations, especially from as a DEI expert, what should, for example, the companies need to do or organizations need to do to create that inclusive environment for any talent, irrespective, international, domestic, whatever it is, for them to thrive and grow within the organization? What are your points on that one?
So my point is here, first of all, recognize the commitment to diversity inclusion and how does that really fuel your company resilience? Again, taking the COVID perspective, what are ask the employees, what are the potential roadblocks to internationalizing and get the employees on board, incentivize recruiting, which is more inclusive, incentivize that it's not like if it's, I don't know what size companies, regardless, that this recruitment should be so that adopted and owned by every employee. So, and it's also the way to approach those roadblocks to diversifying. It's unconscious bias training. It's making an audit of your company, simple as that. figuring out where we want to go from here and what are the talent need we need at the moment. Because we had the discussion on LinkedIn, what is diversity for you? It depends, it's different for every company, but you just need to get started somewhere and see this is how we unapologetically get into our day journey and recognize that it will be bumpy, but at the end, the intohimo, this Finnish ambition level should be put so that it's not, so that people as leaders, they're not afraid to rock the boat, and they're are able to sustain those diversity efforts and recruiting. So I think the focus is on recruitment, focus is on making sure that we're aware of our cross-cultural competencies. 70% of Finnish managers are not ready for multicultural growth in the company, so address that. How do we manage to see life from other points of view, from other people's view? And also just being able to network, being able to shape experiences that bring us commonalities as colleagues, and that we want to not only recruit, but we also want to retain. So it's a gradual experience where you say, how would you want that to be? How you want your working environment to be, so that you want to stay, you want to thrive, you want to have psychological safety, and you're not afraid to voice, because this is what all defines Finnish culture: equality, fairness, and efficiency. So I think just putting that into use and recognizing that Finland has got what it has is just, I think that a fear of the unknown can really put us apart. So just start somewhere with bringing that empathy into action. How do we want to work ourselves, especially after COVID?
Definitely. Since we're running out of time, I want to jump into the last question that we have. At least this has been kind of brought a few times about the cross-sectoral collaboration between different organizations. Kristina, you have been a big advocate, at least strong advocate on this one, that kind of like systems, the information has to be centralized. There has to be a system where people can find information as easily as possible. At the same time, different organizations working for the same mission should kind of like collaborate, so that they are not, kind of like having the cannibalism kind of like culture, but rather collaborating together and then kind of like going towards this mission. Kristina, what are your thoughts on this? That how can you kind of like increase the collaboration between the organizations to create that kind of inclusive environment for the talents overall?
Well, that's a very difficult question, because I mean, a simple answer would be like, okay, well, the city of Helsinki needs to create a portal or invest in that. But again, we're now triggering multiple challenges, which are funding being one, and who's going to own it, and how do you qualify for it. But I think the basic piece is that we need to have someone who's going to stand up, walk the talk, and an organization, a government body, stand up and say, this is important to us. We're going to make an investment in this. This is kind of the structural bounds for how you participate, and we just start doing. I'm a big believer that doing is like taking those steps is the best way. You might have bumps along the way, but if you don't start, but I would say that first and foremost, and it's a little bit to Camilla's point about like you don't see a lot of diversity within the government organizations, and I appreciate that you need Finnish and Swedish for most government roles, but still, if you want to solve a problem, this is not a problem, sorry. If you want to address the customer needs, you need to sort of reflect what the customer base looks like. And so having all Finnish teams build processes, information banks and services for foreigners isn't necessarily going to hit the mark. So I strongly believe whatever we do, we need a cross-representation of the folks with which we're building it for. And that means having people like ourselves on organizations and committees that are building the services. So if we're going to build a centralized portal of information, it would make sense that we have the companies or the people from the companies, ideally not only Finns, sitting on that body to develop the service. So my first step would be that as we sort of build a go forward plan, that for the existing committees and organizations, that we make a conscious effort to ensure that there's diversity and inclusivity across the existing ones. And I think the government can make that, well, okay, let's say a mandate or just start doing it, walk the talk. So start putting foreigners on your committees And eventually that will drive a big change. But I think this, I mean, we just need someone to own it and own it big time and drive it forward. And I think it's going to end up being a private or an NGO, quite frankly, but I would love to see the government step up and do it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that point. Maybe we have like really running out of time, about 5 minutes of time. We could go through one or two questions that have been asked by the audiences through Q&A function. I'm trying to find at least one question that has been raised quite many times. Is like, why kind of like, we've been talking bits and pieces about this topic, but what are the things, like what are one or two things that says why companies are afraid to hire international talent overall? So maybe like I could go with Kamilla first. Like, why are they afraid?
I think it's about that lack of, it's a bit of a fear to be the first one to start the change. Nordics, in Finland, you look at the Nordics, and if someone did it, then it's easier to copy than to be the pioneer. So I think we need to embrace more sisu and shape more inclusive mindset. And that's why one of these programs we have is I'm anti-racist, is one of the ways to really bring in the personal decisions that how can I recruit and how can I be more inclusive as a person rather than putting everything on the CEO's shoulders.
Maybe I could bring Ryan, of course. Maybe in terms of our startup culture, of course, you mentioned about learning Finnish may not be their priority, and then of course there might be a lot of startup related jobs for highly skilled talents. What do you think about, like, especially in the startup culture? What is the situation? Are they afraid to hire international talents? And then sort of like, what are the initiatives that they are doing from their side to either attract from outside or either kind of like have hire people within that are within Finland itself?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely not afraid to hire international talent. That's for sure. I mean, I think, a lot of recruiting is done, recruiting people from abroad just because there's a lack of that maybe skill set or something like that, a language or a programming language and stuff, or experience in scaling to the degree that they need to scale. That hasn't been done here in Finland. And so, there is that need and want for international talent. I think also, like, finding talent that's already here in Finland is even better, right? Because, you don't have the costs associated with relocating someone. And to be honest, it's not like you have a ton of foreign talent knocking at Finland's border, let me in, when you're competing against countries like, Germany, Berlin, or Amsterdam and stuff like that. And so, I think for a lot of Finnish tech startups, the idea is, what is the ideal profile of a candidate who you're trying to recruit? And it's probably not some maybe, single person looking for nightlife and, restaurants and all these other things that you can find in Berlin with a tech startup. But it's really, selling the idea that it's a great place to have a family, a young couple looking to start, a great education, great healthcare, quality of life, all of that stuff. So it's really kind of identifying then the ideal candidate to recruit from abroad to Finland.
Great, thanks, Ryan. Last question that I want to direct to Kamilla in terms of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like, what practical tools would you recommend, for example, the organizations in order to sort of inspire them, motivate them towards, diversity and promoting, recruitment practices in that sense? Like, what kind of practical tools do you kind of like suggest? Kamilla, you're mute.
I was muted. So the practical tools for companies, and again, I'm coming from this specific level of the projects that I've been also get my hands dirty in. First of all, think of how do you shape the talent pipeline for those outside traditional mold, and really engage in your community. There's talents everywhere. Second, figure out what are the roadblocks to your own diversity inclusion journey and see what help do you need, what kind of specific, I called it a la carte training, and get through that. Also, what's Inklusiiv offering, a few other consulting agencies as well has been really vocal about. And three, do also iteratively. Not all the training programs are supposed to microwave you to be inclusive employer. So see anything from the website design and proofreading your job applications to be more inclusive, but also to really looking at, okay, where is the bottlenecks that we need to avoid so that people could actually want to work for you. If you put in an anonymous recruitment, are you actually going to get that? And how do you actually share your job ads so that you actually get the quality, diverse talent to apply to your company? So, and the finally thing is that shaping your employer brand with diversity inclusion journey needs to be transformational, not reputational. And that's beyond that, pride logos and Tuesday blackouts that we experienced just last few years.
Thanks, Kamilla. And on that note, I really want to, we're really kind of running out of time, but I really want to, take this time to thank everyone and in the audience for such an engaging kind of conversation going on there. And of course, for all the Q&A sessions. Also, thank you to all the amazing speakers for giving your take on this very timely topic. We will soon share the feedback form on the chat box, so please fill it up as we would love to receive your feedback to further kind of improve the content in the future. And in the next few days, at least the next steps from our side is that we will be sharing a blog that includes some of the key takeaways, for example, if you're not able to follow the whole conversation. So we are going to create some key takeaways from the event and some practical tips on the ways of creating, inclusive culture towards international talents in Finland. Thank you once again to everyone here from Inklusiiv. Really wishing a lovely rest of the day and the weekend, of course, and hope to see you all in the future events. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.